Hello, everyone. Welcome to our 39th episode of In the Trenches, Kroll's weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. My name is Keith Wojcicki, Global Head of Threat Intelligence. This week, we are joined by George Glass, Mukesh Nagar, Dave Truman, Ryan Hicks, and of course, our in-house expert, Sarah Becker, all from our cyber threat intelligence team. Today is February 26, 2024, and we'll be covering the most recent trends that our threat intelligence team is witnessing in the trenches. Now let's talk news you can use for February 26th. There's some good stuff going on. Last week we highlighted the Department of State's bounty offer for targeting Hive, Black Hat, and Alpha V. This week, the Department of State expanded its efforts by offering $10 million for information leading to the identification of key members of the ransom group Lockbit. Now, we all know Lockbit. Additionally, a $5 million reward is also being offered for information about known affiliates that could lead to apprehension. So the government's really going after these guys, and their aggressive approach towards the offering rewards against ransomware threat actors reflects the severity and the urgency to protect companies from potential attacks against all these ransomware groups. The rewards demonstrate a really firm stance against cyber attacks and show the government's commitment to protect the public from devastating impact of ransomware, as we've seen throughout the years. To continue, during the past week, Kroll detected instances of active exploitation targeting the ConnectWise Screen Connect vulnerabilities outlined in our previous report. This activity has also been observed and confirmed by CISA. The CVE numbers for the vulnerability are CVE 2024-1709 with a CVSS rating of a 10.0, and the CVE 2024-1708 with a CVSS rating of 8.4. The vulnerability was discovered and disclosed by a Kroll SOC analyst on February 13th, 2024. Since then, the advisory was published, made proof, and there's multiple proof of concepts that have been released. It is recommended that any affected systems be patched immediately using the ConnectWise advisory. Definitely take a look at the CISA website. I believe they said by the end of the month they should have everything should be up to date and just making sure that you're not going to be attacked. So if you have any questions or concerns, please connect with Kroll at cti@kroll.com. That's cti@kroll.com. Now let's get into today's briefing. We'll be covering the following trends our team is concentrating on. AKIRA, Brian's going to talk about AKIRA. Mukesh is going to go into some new malware. Dave is going to go into some different aspects of Salesforce. George is going to highlight some our spotlight on malware. And then, of course, the Ransomware Roundup with Sarah Becker. So Ryan, in January, AKIRA was Kroll's top ransomware variant. We witnessed exploiting new victims. What are you observing about this group?
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, hi, everyone. So just a kind of a quick update, really. We mentioned a few weeks ago that we've seen a rise in AKIRA cases in 2024, where there's been a continued trend of the AKIRA threat actor gaining access through Cisco VPN. Now, last week, the US Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, so CISA, added a legacy vulnerability, which is CVE 2020-3259. To its known exploited catalog, following reports of its initial use or initial access use by AKIRA. And this CVE, obviously a few years old now, if exploited, allows for an unauthenticated remote attacker to retrieve memory contents of the affected device, thus disclosing some confidential information. Now, there's limited detail at the minute of how that CV was used to gain initial access and the kind of surrounding compromise. But as this is an information disclosure, it's likely that the information gathered from that exploitation contained some sort of credentials that were then used to remotely log into the VPN. And although the vulnerability was released back in 2020, at the time there were no sort of known public exploits nor indication of exploitation in the wild. So it's kind of the first time it's been seen, really. And just noting that at the time of the vulnerability, there was a patch made to mitigate against that particular threat. So as I mentioned, we've seen obviously AKIRA uptick. We have observed that the exploitation of a 2023 Cisco vulnerability related to initial access, as well as likely brute force attacks against Cisco VPN devices, among other providers. And this addition of a legacy vulnerability just really continues to broaden the vulnerabilities and techniques that we're seeing used for initial access by AKIRA, particularly when targeting organization VPNs. And then just two recommendations, sort of key ones that I just wanted to point out. So ensuring multi-factor authentication is in place for accounts that access the VPN, particularly for that recent vulnerability where potentially credentials were stolen through exploitation. And then, of course, ensuring latest patches are applied, particularly noting if there's any kind of legacy services or internet-facing systems that are out there. It could be a number of years before they're actually exploited, as was in this case. So being aware of what's out there and making sure they are patched. So yeah, that's all for me. I'll hand back to Keith. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah, that's great advice, especially the MFA. I mean, we all should know that by now, but thank you so much for providing that intel over talking about AKIRA. So Mukesh, new malware variant has been discovered, but there's an interesting twist to this one. Can you elaborate on this new attack for us?
Of course, Keith. Hi, everyone. So, in a recent discovery by security researchers from AKIRA Security, they identified a new type of malware, which they've coined MIGO malware. And this is a highly sophisticated malware targeting Redis service on Linux host. Primarily focused is for cryptocurrency mining. The campaign's uniqueness lies in its own advanced system weakening techniques, which has been notable through the use of the Golang programming language and the compile time obfuscation. The malware serves as a downloader for an XMRig installer, showcasing a higher level of sophistication in executing cryptojacking attacks. Within those part of the XMRig installer, it also disables and uninstalled any previously installed coin miners on the Redis server itself. The investigation was triggered by unusual commands being spotted on a Redis honeypot. The researchers identified attackers disabling critical Redis configurations, indicating an intention to communicate externally and suggesting potential future exploitation strategies. The payload itself delivers a multi-stage Golang ELF binary with, as mentioned previously, a compile time obfuscation. Once the malware has established persistence through the use of condrobs, it conceals its presence with the use of a user mode rootkit and dynamically rewrites the miner's configurations for continuous operations. This new malware campaign shows a significant leap in sophistication, demanding a heightened security measures and effective defenses in this landscape of cyber threats. We do recommend users and organizations to employ EDR and NGAP solutions on all endpoints, as well as ensuring that enhanced security configurations for Redis service are implemented, including proper authentication and access controls measures. We also recommend, if possible, to segregate the network, as well as monitor network traffic for unusual patterns and behaviors. That's all from me. Back to you, Keith.
Thanks for the overview, Mukesh. I really appreciate it. Dave, there has been a new vulnerability discovered in Salesforce that could potentially lead to a leak of all different types of sensitive data. Can you explain what's happening on this?
Yeah, certainly. Varonis Threat Labs released a report claiming that they had found several critical vulnerabilities and misconfigurations in Apex applications. Apex is a Java-like programming language used for creating Salesforce customizations. Many of the applications on the Salesforce marketplace are written in Apex. Whilst Varonis did not go into details of the critical vulnerabilities, they did say they notified several Fortune 500 companies and some government agencies they found to be affected. The report indicates that rather than being a singular vulnerability, the issue is more around the applications in the ecosystem not being written with appropriate security controls, rather than flaws in the underlying technologies such as Apex. For example, injection into the Salesforce object query language, SOQL, which is similar to SQL injection in standard web development. Just like standard web development, there are ways to interact with SOQL which don't allow for injection. However, some Apex developers fail to write code this way and instead build their queries via concatenating strings, including unvalidated user-supplied strings. Other issues arise where sensitive objects are not properly configured to restrict access via authentication and allow an attacker to access via a direct URL. This report is noteworthy as it highlights the ecosystem surrounding Salesforce customizations might not yet be security mature, and these applications are not being appropriately security audited. Ultimately, misplaced trust could lead to a major breach. It is vital that companies using Apex customizations audit them for security, regardless of whether those customizations are in-house written or purchased from the marketplace. Thank you. Keith?
Thanks, Dave. Really appreciate the overview. Now let's dive into our malware chronicles with George Glass. George?
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, we're continuing our Spotlight series on another information stealer that we've been covering on and off for the last couple of months, and we included it in our Q4 reporting on the threat that information stealers present. RHADAMANTHYS, a widespread information stealer distributed via malvertising, fake software, and phishing. It was first seen in 2022, and it's offered as a malware as a service by a threat actor known as KingCrete 2022. They're offering it on the underground forums and via their Telegram channel. As with other information stealers, and one of the reasons that we're featuring it in the spotlight is it saw significant development through Q4 of 2023. It's designed to be an information stealer. Some of those developments, again, like other info stealers that we've covered, has updated to still Google authentication tokens that may persist beyond password resets. But interestingly, the latest versions make it more of a sort of a multi-purpose tool rather than a pure information stealer, giving the malware the capability to run PowerShell and VBS scripts that can be arbitrarily added by the threat actors that purchase access to the tool. So examples of usage in the wild, Google Tag reported that RHADAMANTHYS had been used by KTA029, aka Sandworm, a Russian APT group, and that was deployed using CVE 2023-38831, the WinRAR vulnerability that we've been covering since August. Lots of these sort of malware as a service info stealers spread through malicious websites. We've covered that quite a lot with VIDAR, and RHADAMANTHYS really is no different, using malvertising and SEO poisoning to push malicious versions of AnyDesk, Zoom, Notepad++ to the top of Google search results. And RHADAMANTHYS is a very well-featured malware. I won't go through all of the capabilities of the tool, but you can see there that's the sort of stuff that the malware is designed to steal. It's pretty comprehensive. Obviously, there's a fairly significant focus on cryptocurrency. One of its sort of standout features is the ability to edit the keyboard to change transaction addresses as it discovers them in the clipboard. It will change the transaction address to point to one that's controlled by the threat actor, which is particularly sneaky. And RHADAMANTHYS arrives really in three stages. You have the initial loader stage, the shellcode dropper stage, and the actual info stealer itself. And it's really designed to operate as stealthily as possible. It uses anti-analysis and evasion techniques to hinder AV detection. It uses techniques using the AKIRA project, which has also been seen in Bumblebee as a way of bypassing sandbox and AV detection. And nevertheless, it actually enjoys pretty good detection coverage in VirusTotal. And we've done analysis on the TTPs and the MITRE mapping that this particular malware presents, and we are very confident in our ability to detect behaviors and methods of achieving the MITRE attack techniques exhibited by RHADAMANTHYS. I think the main threat that this particular malware will present, as we covered in the Q4 report, is the targeting of home users. And users that reuse passwords and maybe have corporate credentials stored on their password managers or in files on their device at home that could lead to organizational breaches based on the discovery of those in stolen certificate marketplaces. Yeah, and with that, I'll hand back to Keith. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George, especially for the insightful review of RHADAMANTHYS. It's pretty comprehensive, like you said. So let's go over to our ransomware expert, Sarah Becker. Sarah, there seems to be a bunch of rapid news coming around about ransomware every day. What's the latest that you're seeing here in the trenches?
Yeah, Keith. So the first thing that I'm seeing right now is that Night ransomware, which emerged in July 2023, and it was a rebrand of Cyclops ransomware. Is the source code is now for sale. This ransomware targeted systems such as Mac OS, Windows, and Linux, and the ransomware became popular due to it providing info stealers in a light version of its encryptor for more low-profile kind of affiliates that are doing more targeted of smaller organizations kind of attacks. So the threat actor Cyclops posted on the underground forum RAMP, which RAMP is a big forum for a lot of ransomware discussions and sales, that they are selling the source code for Night 3.0 ransomware. And the sale's going to include the source code of the panel and the locker. The sale is only being conducted through XSS or a RAMP moderator, and it's only going to be sold once. So within the post, they did not list a price. They did supply Talks ID for communication. So whoever's an interested buyer can communicate back and forth and assume negotiations for a price for the sale. The version of the ransomware that is being sold, it was released November 5th, 2023. And it's kind of unknown right now the reason for the source code for the sale. And then next up, last week we did talk about Lockbit going down, and now Lockbit is back up. So the new site has a new onion domain as well as numerous Tor mirrors. So there's a lot of listed onion domains to access the site. The site is up now. There's currently 16 victim postings at the time, with one of them being the FBI. And this is kind of a lengthy message from Lockbit's administrators, just talking about the takedown, stating pretty much what researchers were already saying and what we reported on last week, that the group was most likely exploited from the critical PHP flaw CVE 2023-3824. The admin also acknowledged again in the lengthy posts that they did not update the PHP due to personal negligence and irresponsibility. The lengthy post also said that the FBI, quote unquote, hacked their infrastructure because of the attack against Fulton County, which was possibly containing stolen documents and information about Donald Trump that could affect the upcoming election. So again, this was speculation from the admin as to why FBI was targeting them. And then further claims into that reply of the takedown and what's ongoing is that the group is saying that they're still operational, and they kind of praise law enforcement in a way of just having the added bonus of revamping their data leak site, as law enforcement hasn't really done that before, of releasing information and kind of mimicking a ransomware group's data leak site. So they did give kind of a pat on the back for the high praise on that. But we're still continuing to monitoring this ongoing situation. This was a really quick turnaround for the group to, have claimed that their whole infrastructure was taken down. But as we can see, they've risen above and they are back and still posting victims. So we're going to keep monitoring, and we'll keep you guys updated. That's all for me, Keith.
Man, so there's so many questions, so many exciting things going on there. Can't wait till next week we update with more intel on that, because that's talk about the election, talking about all kinds of data being posted, and then their backups. It's phenomenal. Great work on that. Thank you so much. So February 2024 is a leap year. For those that didn't know, here are a couple facts about leap year. In case you didn't know, during the leap year, you're working for free if you're on a fixed annual wage. Just think about that. We have that extra day we're working for free, and this will not attribute to any of us, but any prisoner out there with a 1-year sentence that has that leap year within their term will serve that extra day without even complaining. Another crazy fact, which is completely outdated, but I wanted to mention because it was kind of neat. It is tradition that women are allowed to propose to men today. If a man did refuse the proposal, he would be fined a kiss, a silk dress, or 12 pairs of gloves. No idea where that came from. I really don't have much more to say about that, but I saw that. I'm like, wow, this is pretty interesting. So leap year happens every 4 years. So many different facts. Go ahead and kind of research on your own, but they're fun little facts. So I'd like to thank everybody that's taken the time to tune in to today's Kroll's weekly threat intelligence briefing. We hope you found the session informative. If you have any follow-up questions about the briefing or any other questions regarding cyber in general, please contact the team at cti@kroll.com. Again, that's cti@kroll.com. Thank you. I hope everyone has a wonderful day and happy leap year.